Some countries look perfectly shaped, others look like they were drawn during an earthquake. From nations that stretch for thousands of kilometers to one shaped like rivers, claws, and snakes, these are the countries with the weirdest shapes on Earth and the surprising stories behind them. On a globe, Chile looks like someone sliced a country out of the side of South America and stretched it down to the end of the world. It's over 4,000 kilometers long, but on average only 177 kilometers wide. A country 24 times longer than it is wide. Chile's shape exists because of geography. To the east, the Andes Mountains rise like a wall, and to the west, the Pacific Ocean cuts it off completely. Between them lies just enough habitable land for cities, farms, and roads. So, the country stretched vertically, following the terrain instead of expanding highways. From deserts in the north to glaciers in the south, Chile's shape holds nearly every climate on Earth, and that's exactly why it looks like a continent squeezed into a sliver. If Chile's shape looks unnatural, one country in Africa takes strange even further, shaped like a snake twisting across an entire region. Subscribe now, and I'll surprise you with every new upload. On a map of West Africa, the Gambia looks like someone traced the river with a marker and stopped exactly where the river ends. That's not far from the truth. The Gambia was once controlled by the British, who used the river for trade. The land on both sides, now Senegal, was controlled by the French. When colonial borders were drawn, the British kept only the territory extending roughly 10 kilometers on each side of the river. The result was a country that snakes inland for 480 kilometers, but never more than 50 kilometers wide. From space, the Gambia looks like a scar carved through the Senegal, a border following water instead of logic. And while Gambia stretches like a thread through another country, one nation in Europe looks like it was twisted and folded by hand. Croatia's outline curves around Bosnia and Herzegovina like a giant horseshoe wrapping around it almost completely. This strange shape came from history. In medieval times, the Croatian kingdom joined Hungary, and then later Austria-Hungary, and after the Ottoman invasions, Bosnia remained under Turkish control while Croatia stayed Christian. When Yugoslavia broke apart in the 1990s, the old interval divisions became national borders. Croatia ended up an outline that hugs Bosnia on three sides and reaches deep into the Adriatic with a jagged coastline of over 1,000 islands. And the strangest part, Bosnia has a tiny 20-kilometer coastline on the Adriatic because of the border, the only reason it's not completely landlocked. If Croatia looks like it's hugging another country, one African nation looks like it was bitten in half, a shape that shouldn't exist at all. In southern Africa, Namibia has one of the strangest extensions in the world, a long thin strip of land that stretches eastward for 450 kilometers between Angola, Zambia, Botswana, and Zimbabwe. It's called the Caprivi Strip and looks like a finger reaching across the continent. The story dates back to 1890 when Germany controlled Namibia because the Germans wanted access to the Zambezi River to connect their colonies in East Africa, and Britain controlled nearby lands and gave them this thin corridor in exchange for an island off Zanzibar. The plan, however, did not work. The Zambezi turned out to be too shallow for navigation, but the border stayed. And today, Namibia's strange finger still pokes into four countries, serving no original purpose, but existing as one of Africa's most bizarre geographical relics. If Namibia's finger points inland, one Middle Eastern country's shape spirals around its neighbors like a question mark made of dessert. On the southeastern corner of the Arabian Peninsula, Oman has one of the world's most confusing shapes. Its main territory covers the coastal plains of Muscat along with a mountain range, but it also has a separate exclave, the Musandam Peninsula, located 100 kilometers away inside of the United Arab Emirates. That juts into the Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's most strategic waterways, and because of geography and old tribal divisions, Oman retained control even after the UAE gained independence. Oman's shape gets even more strange, because within its exclave is a small UAE enclave surrounded entirely by Omani territory. And so, Oman is a country with part of itself inside of another country, and inside of that, another country's territory again. A border puzzle nested like Russian dolls in the desert. And while Oman is split by design, one European country looks more like it was stretched by accident. Norway is a geographical ribbon of more than 1,700 kilometers, but rarely more than 400 kilometers wide. It hugs the Scandinavian peninsula from top to bottom, with coastlines so intricate that if you unfolded every fjord and island, Norway's shoreline would stretch over 100,000 kilometers. Its shape comes from the glaciers carving deep valleys during the Ice Age, but politically, its length served another purpose: control of the Atlantic coastline for fishing and trade. The mountains to the east kept Sweden out, while the ocean to the west kept Norway connected to the sea. Its narrowness, however, makes it fragile. Traveling from Oslo in the south to the far northern towns near Russia takes more than 30 hours by road. It looks like a land barely hanging onto Europe, and that's exactly what it is. While Norway stretches endlessly north, one African country stretches upward as well, but has a perfect vertical strip that makes no sense. On a map, Malawi looks like someone dropped a pencil on Africa and traced around it. It's 850 kilometers long, but rarely more than 160 kilometers wide, and that's because of a lake. Lake Malawi, one of Africa's longest, forms most of its eastern border. When colonial powers divided the region, the British claimed the lake's western shore, while the Portuguese took the east. The result was a long and narrow corridor following water, a country that exists because of a lake's shape. Crossing Malawi east to west takes only a few hours. Traveling north to south can take days. The entire economy and population cling to the lake like a country built on a shoreline instead of land. And while Malawi's shape follows water, one Asian country's shape is defined by mountains, but it's still one of the most illogical borders ever drawn. Afghanistan's Wakhan corridor looks like a narrow road reaching into the sky, a thin strip of land 350 kilometers long and as little as 15 kilometers wide, wedged between Tajikistan, Pakistan, and China. It was created in the 19th century during the Great Game, when Britain and Russia were competing for influence in Central Asia. To keep their empires from touching, they agreed that a neutral Afghan buffer should separate them, and so the corridor was drawn. Today, it's one of the most isolated places on Earth. There are no paved roads or major towns, and mountain passes reach over 4,900 meters. It connects Afghanistan to China on paper, and in reality, the route is so difficult, it's almost never used. It's a shape that made sense to empires, and not to geography or the people that live there. If Afghanistan's corridor was meant to separate empires, one South American country's shape was meant to claim everything and nearly split the continent. Argentina stretches 3,700 kilometers from the tropics to the southern tip of South America and keeps on going, claiming a slice of Antarctica as its national territory. Its long and narrow shape mirrors the Andes on the west and the Atlantic on the east, and the design gives Argentina access to every type of land. The strange part is its southern half, Patagonia, a vast and empty expanse of steppe and wind that looks like another world. Argentina's southern borders follow rivers and latitude lines that exist only on maps and not in nature. And its Antarctic claim, it overlaps with Chile and Britain, creating one of the most geopolitically confusing shapes on Earth. A country that stretches from tropical rain to polar ice, a vertical continent pretending to be a nation. And while Argentina stretches from jungle to ice, one Asian country's shape coils like a snake through mountains and deserts. Vietnam runs in a long S shape down the eastern edge of the Indo-Chinese peninsula, over 1,000 kilometers long and only 50 kilometers wide at its most narrow point. The strange shape is historical. Early Vietnamese kingdoms began in the Red River Delta in the north, and over the centuries they expanded south, following the coast while pushing the ancient Champa civilization out of the way. The result became marching southward that stretched through the country like a ribbon along the sea, leaving mountains to the west and the South China Sea to the east. Today, that shape defines everything: climate, economy, culture, and in the north, Hanoi freezes in winter, and in the south, Ho Chi Minh City never sees cold weather. It's one of the most distinct shapes in all of Asia, a dragon that curls along the ocean. And if Vietnam's shape came from expansion, one European country's came from obsession, the endless quest to control a river. Portugal looks deceptively simple, a clean rectangle on the west of Spain, but that simplicity hides one of the most strange geopolitical stories in Europe. The borders have remained almost identical since 1297, making them some of the oldest unchanged borders in the world. But the reason they're so straight is not geography, it comes down to politics. Medieval Portugal's kings expanded south during the Reconquista and then stopped once they reached the Atlantic. The country's shape is a fossil, frozen by history, and the east follows mountain ridges and the rest is purely the product of treaties drawn centuries ago. Portugal has the most geometrically consistent outline in Europe. If Portugal's shape stayed perfectly still, one North African country's outline was carved by pure geometry. Egypt's eastern and southern borders are some of the most straight on Earth. The 22nd parallel and longitude 25 degrees east form perfect geometric edges through the desert. The borders were drawn in the 19th century by colonial powers using maps and not terrain, cutting straight across mountains, dunes, and tribes. But Egypt's real shape is stranger than any line, because 95% of its people live on only 5% of the land, and all along the Nile River. If you trace population instead of borders, Egypt would look like a single green line cutting through a yellow desert, a country shaped not by a map, but by a river that refuses to die. The world's weirdest shaped countries prove one thing: borders are never logical. They're carved by mountains, drawn by colonizers, and trapped by nature. Some shapes tell stories of survival, while others of empire, and more so of pure coincidence. A map may look static, but every strange outline hides a history of conflict, geography, and human stubbornness. And when you look closer, you realize the world isn't made of perfect countries. It's made of stories that are written in the strangest shapes imaginable. The world is full of mysteries, and we're here to crack them. Thanks for watching World Cracked. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel so that you never miss another great video like this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.